difficulties that you see in your work, and the difficulties that you see that people are suffering, encountering, and like protect yourself too? Do you try and stay objective? I mean, it's really hard to do that when you're doing something like journalism, but how do you manage it?
That's a good question. I think I was a lot better at it in journalism because journalism is an observer role. Like, so you go into it thinking of yourself as the observer and you observe, and then you hope. What happened with me was the more you observe, of course, and you see things, then you think, well, I'd like to see that change, but you're still in a kind of a passive state in that you can only write about what you think should be changed and then wait for somebody else to take it. So in a way, you're kind of removed from the issues. There's a bit of a buffer. But when I became more involved in community, that was definitely, and it remains a problem for me. The worst was when I was working at Piers, Victoria, and people were coming in the door and say, I had a journalism background, so I didn't know, like somebody said to me about boundaries, and I'm like, what does that even mean? I don't know what boundaries are because I didn't have any of that training. So on the upside, interesting way to, engage with the issues. On the downside, I didn't know that I was taking on all this pain. And the pain is not the people's pain. It's that you can't help them with their pain, right? Like there's no services, or there's not enough, or they're the wrong services, or they're shaped the wrong way, or you see people come in with all their earnestness wanting help with these big issues that everybody thinks they don't want help with, right? Like, drug use, for instance. You'll have people go on and on about the bad drug users, and in reality, so many of them are desperate for help, right? But they can't get it. So that was the piece that I found and still find very difficult, that we don't understand the issues right down to the ground. And we judge, and we spend a lot of money, but not in ways that actually change the issues.
Can you elaborate on more efficient use of resources? What changes would you like to see that would make the biggest difference?
Okay, so I have just been thinking about this issue because I'm in work that it makes it really relevant, but so let's put all of these kind of things around social justice, social issues, wears many names. Community well-being is another name that it wears, but put them all together and say, sort of social health, right? Like we got your medical health, right? How you are in your body. We've got, and then social health is how are you in your community? How are you in your family, in your neighborhood? How are you? So when you look at that, how we fund those services right now. So health, there's a protocol, right? Everybody, if you go to a hospital, wherever you are, no, it won't be the nicest, the one in Chetwynd may not be as nice as the one in Vancouver, but you're still gonna get, if you got breast cancer, you're still gonna get the same kind of treatment. The doctor all has, everybody's got a protocol. They're gonna follow a certain thing. They're gonna help you get past your breast cancer, right? Like that's what the health system does. In social care, there is no goal, there's no protocol, there's no strategy. We haven't made one, other than the sweeping vision statements like, we want to end poverty. That's a great sweeping vision statement, but if it has nothing hanging from it, no strategy, no how will we actually end poverty in British Columbia, let's just take BC, then you can't solve the problem, right? So our social problems are all just like that. They're all living up there in the vision land where somebody says, we want to eradicate homelessness, but then there's no strategy put to that. There's no plan, we don't even state, what do we mean by ending homelessness? We mean that, it's gotta be more detailed than everybody has a home. And that's the piece that's really, I think, is really affecting the way our communities feel and function in this era, is because we have a big bag of services that we call social care, but it's not mapped out in any kind of way that would actually start to solve the issues that we see all around us, including loneliness and, I'm including all of those things, isolation, all of those things that affect our social well-being.
how do you write in a way that is meaningful and impactful, not only to yourself and to the people you're writing about, but also to the people that need to hear it?
So I am a strategic communications person, and I underline strategic because I think that's really important. Like that question you're asking is basically, how do you go from just saying whatever you feel like saying about an issue to actually getting it so that people want to read it, right? Like so it's fine, like you're writing in your journal, say whatever you want, but if you're trying to influence change, you really have to think strategically about who are you trying to talk to, what do they need to hear, how would you shape an argument for, in the case of people who don't want to hear it. So there's going to be some people, just forget them. They really don't want to hear it. Like there's no point in going toe to toe with climate change denier, you know, because they don't want to hear. So, but there's this whole other body of people who are just not sure, and they're ready to hear an argument. So you think about them. What do they need to hear? What do they already know? What do they not know? How can you make them care about an issue that they're curious about, but they don't know how to get into it, and it's, with climate change especially, it's kind of frightening to contemplate your own role, because then it means you have to do something, right? As soon as you think that I do have a role in this, then it's sort of, so it's thinking about all of that before you start, and then the really important thing is you go into an issue with your mind wide open. Like you don't know how you're gonna feel when not yet. You don't know. Like you're gonna go in, you're gonna talk to everybody, you're gonna read all the things you have to read without saying, I'm going in believing that this piece is about X, because you don't know that it's about X until you get there. And you may have to change your mind about certain things when you learn something, right? So I think that's a really important piece too, because then you're engaging with issues really open-mindedly and checking your own biases, right? We all have biases. That's one of the key. You're born into biases. The life that you have gives you biases, and the worst biases that we have, of course, are the ones that we have no idea we have. So being that open-minded piece as a public writer allows you to keep those biases, at least challenge them at all times.
You had a question?
Yeah. What do you think is more like positive, inspirational, solution-focused reporting versus like the more conventional, problem-focused things that we see?
I totally like the idea of solution-based. I think that, and emerging practices kind of stuff but here's the thing with the media. I think they're dead anyway, so really you don't have to worry a lot about the errors of the media. But the thing with media was somehow it got into this thing of having to show the either or of everything. So it wasn't even the negative that they went for negative. Everybody always says the crashes and the horrible fires, but what it is they always go in thinking there are two sides to an issue, and they will present to be non-biased. They'll present side one and side two, and that's their job. And the problem is there's 15 sides to an issue. There's that problem, but also let's take, I'm using climate change a lot just because it's a really good one to look at, but so if you've got 99,000 scientists who believe that climate change is happening and have done the research, and you've got one guy who says it's not true, that is not two sides of the argument, right? These people need to get 99,000 words, and this guy gets one to actually be representative of a balanced reporting. So that's the problem. What if they all present an issue, and perhaps in a really valid, interesting way, but then they come in with whoever the random person is who speaks against it, and it kind of cancels the whole thing out and feels negative. Feels like you're trapped in, just bad decisions all over the place. I think inspiring and hopeful is good. However, it still has to be done strategically if you're actually trying to influence change, because the other side of journalism that I've also seen is what I call the pull up your bootstraps school of storytelling, where one person is focused on as an amazing example of going from, messed up person to, wow, look at her now, she's doing all this amazing stuff. Pull up your bootstraps masquerades as inspirational, but what really is about forgetting the collective reasons for why that person had that happen, the bigger societal reasons, and putting it onto the individual. So now,
Like those Eagle Nation stories, someone donates like $1 million to fix something, but that should have been fixed by the government or society.
exactly, and you always do the big story on the $1 million donor and not on the 1 million people who gave $1 because that was all they had, right? Like that. We just have to watch what we mean by inspiring. Like it should be something that actually inspires change and not that individual success story.
Can we jump to Charlotte and then one more here?
Hi. Yeah, as someone who's studying to work in journalism and has tried to do some interview-based stories, and something that I find challenging in the work is especially in speaking to people whose story is something that's very foreign to me. An example would be like when I was in Africa and talking to people about their lives and livelihoods and experiences, writing about that and understanding that like it's hard, I find, to write someone else's story because it's someone else's story. But I also recognize being a vessel to communicate that story and raise awareness. But how do you approach that and not really take that home with you, I guess?
Well, I mean, I think you have to be very, very honest when you're doing those kinds of stories, right? To not get yourself in it,
Yeah.
and to be the vessel and not the as told to me kind of person.
Yeah, totally.
And I think you really need to check your own reactions. Like I've seen some of that kind of writing where people put in, I was shocked to learn that. Well, I don't care whether you were shocked to learn. Just tell me about that person, right? Like that's who I care about, is that person. And again, I think the observer piece is probably the most important. Like with the full senses, like what you're sitting there talking to them, what does that look like in that moment? How are they, what do you see around you? So in journalism, there's an old thing called show, don't tell, right? So I still really hold with that if you can place someone in that moment with that person as a full person, then you are doing their story justice. You don't know everything about them. How could you possibly do that? But you're kind of providing that way. You're opening the door, opening a window, so that a world that doesn't know about something can come in and take a look, basically. But you're not standing in the window going, "Come and hear the story."
Yeah.
Take it away. You're on.
Hi. So I really see nonprofits as like filling a need where government or those kinds of services are lacking, and that's where they come about from. I think Piers does amazing work. I'm just kind of curious, you briefly mentioned like burnout and having to kind of know your boundaries, and I guess I think that that's quite a theme for people who work in nonprofits and providing services more generally. So how can we kind of take care of ourselves while taking care of others? If you have any thoughts on that?
Well, personally, I've always liked to burn out. Like that, to me that means I'm really in it, right? And then the thing is, I do burn out, and then I need to back away for a while. And just, it doesn't mean I have to give up all the good work, but just do something different and give my head a break while supporting whoever else has just stepped into it. But I don't like, this is personal, I don't like the kind of a middle ground feeling. I like to be all in. And generally, if you're all in, you're gonna really care and you're gonna feel it. I mean, like I did notice, here's what I noticed about Piers when I was heading that up. I got insane. I cried every night on the way home in the car, and I turned into one of these people who, would be at a party and someone would say, "How's work?" And I would just be like, Puff the Magic Dragon. I just like flame them into the wall, right? And you could, pretty soon I saw people just trying to do that. to sneak away, and I realized that not only was I burned out in a way that I did need to go take a break, but I had lost my effectiveness to communicate on that issue because I was so angry. And I was angry at what I was mentioning earlier. I was angry at the sort of the lack of services, but then the kind of smug feeling like people didn't want services when what I was seeing coming in the door. I was just sick by seeing pregnant women and discovering that was the hardest group to find services for, right? You know, people carrying the next generation of child, and it was that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I had to just go, right? Like that was 3 years. I'd say probably 2.5 were really good. In the last 6 months, I got a bit crazy, but I still functioned. But then, you know, you need to go away and just kind of clear your head and do something different. Go to Central America for 5 years, you know, experience different kinds of challenges. And then I don't find that I burn out overall from just like the woes of the world, but I burn out over certain kinds of woes when I get too close to them. So you just need to switch your woe up, and it kind of brings you back again, and recognize the pattern of the slump, and that it isn't the end of it, the world or anything. It's just how it works, right? The acceleration toward your passion, you know, your passion's coming, it's coming. It is peaking, you're effective, wow, you're really going for it. And then this, I'm getting too crazy and I'm losing my effectiveness, and then down into the, I feel so terrible about everything. And then back up you come on the other side with a new issue. And the same issue you don't give it up, so that's my, but on self-care, I mean, I think you gotta do physical exercise. That's number one. You gotta spend a lot of time outside. You gotta eat well and drink a lot of water. You know, I think it's this really basic stuff of being in the world. Be with small children too. I highly recommend that. You know, small children you're just there with them, and they straighten you out. I'm really grateful for my youngest grandchildren for sort of keeping my head clear through some of these times.
Anybody else who hasn't asked? And we probably got to take one more question, and then what we'll do is Jody might have a few more minutes. You might just sit at a table if you have some one-on-one stuff. We can do that. The last question? You got it, buddy?
I'm good, never mind.
Okay. So thank you, Jody. Good.
Thank you very much.